Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Julia. Welcome to the April Book Club episode. I'm sorry this episode is late. I have a cold. You'll probably hear it in my voice as we're doing this. Alright, so the book for this month was The College Scam by Charlie Kirk. Without further ado, let's talk about it. So how does this book compare to other books of the same genre you have read in the past? Charlie Kirk was a young person. When he was murdered, he was 31, about to be 32. And this book was published in 2022. So when he wrote this, he was 28. And he writes like a way that a young person would write, in a way that's very passionate and kind of immediate, articulate, of course, but it's well written. It reads like a long, persuasive essay, unlike the last book we read, which read like a long journal article. It was very nice, very refreshing. I was going to say I read very little nonfiction by young people, but really in general, I read very little books by young people. So that was a nice breath of fresh air and enjoyable, something about the book. So let's just talk about the content, any general thoughts I have to share about the book. So the book is broken down into 10 kind of charges that he lays at the door of the college system. And I wrote them out here so you can see. I highlighted 3 here that I related to thinking about my own college experience. I think some of them are kind of overlapping. Like, a college education is ridiculously overpriced, and university as becoming really rich at taxpayer expense. These are kind of overlapping. I would characterize my own college experience as, of course, overpriced, not academically rigorous in any meaningful way, and the professors are all very partisan and feel very comfortable being openly partisan in class. And I have certainly met people who have horror stories of getting kicked out of class for disagreeing with a professor. That's never happened to me, but just creating a tone where they're very obviously intolerant of diversity of view obviously negatively affects students who hold diverse views, you know? So I remember we could talk about some personal anecdotes that kind of relate to these things, because one of the questions is, how does anything in this book remind you of anything that you've experienced personally? And my own college experience, very much so. I felt that lots of things in this book reminded me of my own college experience. I remember I was in college in 2016 when Trump was elected the first time, and I went into class the next day, and one of the professors cried openly in class. I mean, this was a TA teaching like an intro course, but still, very inappropriate and partisan. Definitely lacking a lot of academic rigor. I remember not trying very hard at all in college, and getting not A's, but decent grades on papers, which was very negative for me. And yeah, of course, ridiculously overpriced. And I think something that really bothered me about my college experience is you're not just paying to learn the stuff that you want to learn, you're also paying for all of these ridiculous nonsense classes. I remember being in middle school and high school and having conversations with my parents and saying things like, when am I going to get to learn what I would like to learn about? I feel like I'm wasting all of this time, wasting all of my youth in classes that I don't care about. And they would say, oh, well, that's what college is for. And then I get to college and they're like, oh, yeah, well, you also have to take 2 years of gen eds, and you also have to take a certain amount of classes outside of your college unless you want to get a minor. And it's like, I don't want to do any of that. I would really just like to learn about the subject that I'm interested in learning about. Thanks. You know. So let's talk about a few quotes from the work that I enjoyed. Let's see here. He talks a lot about the college being overpriced, and he also talks about how just discharging student loan debt on the taxpayer doesn't solve the problem, because it doesn't incentivize the colleges to lower the price of college, you know, because they get paid no matter what, right? So if we have a system where students have to pay back the loans themselves instead of pay back the government for the loans, then colleges have an interest in making sure that their education actually prepares students for a job. But because they get paid by the government no matter what, and then the students have to pay back the government, their incentive is to make their programs as easy as possible, basically, so that you graduate. And it doesn't matter to them whether you end up working at a hot dog stand for the rest of your life or not, because they already got paid, right? He also talks about how bankruptcy, you can't get rid of your student loans through bankruptcy. And he has this great quote. This is from page 41. There are only a few categories of debt that cannot be discharged through bankruptcy: alimony and child support, judgments for willful and malicious injury to others, judgments for death or personal injury due to driving under the influence, and student loan debt. If you are struggling to pay your student loans, you're in the same category as a deadbeat, a scofflaw, or a criminal. Why is that? There's lots of great kind of zingy one-liners in this book that I really enjoy. And then there's this whole section that I enjoyed. He's sharing stories from Columbia film grads who graduated. You know, Columbia is an Ivy League school. They have a nice film program where these poor children, these poor young people, they're not children, these poor young people are taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. And even if they get jobs in Hollywood, they make very little money, and they supplement the money with side gigs, right? And then he ends that section of the book with this. So I'm going to read this to you. This is page 45. Here's a suggestion for anyone who wants to go into filmmaking. Forget the master's degree from an elite university. Go to the library and read every book you can find on filmmaking. Then go to youtube.com and search filmmaking. You'll find hundreds of videos on every aspect of filmmaking, including interviews with some of the greatest movie makers in Hollywood. You'll get a college-level education absolutely free. Buy some used camera equipment, lights, booms, mics, and even a drone, plus some state-of-the-art digital editing software. Now, you can make some commercials, independent films, build up your portfolio, and submit it to film producers. If your work is impressive, no one will ask you where you went to film school. You'll be on your way. Attending film school is a way of pretending you're moving toward a film career when you're really putting off adulthood for 4 years. Colleges and universities excel at making students feel like they're accomplishing something when they're just spinning their wheels and avoiding reality. Love it. Great takes here. I think that part of the issues in college stem from issues in public school. The path that Charlie is suggesting is one of these kind of forge your own path things. And I imagine it's difficult if you're 18 and you've lived your whole youth life in this system where you have to ask permission to go to the bathroom, where you feel like to learn anything, you need to be shepherded through the material by someone with a PhD or someone with a special degree. That doesn't really... So for Charlie coming here to say, you need to forge your own path, it's like, well, I've been learning for the past 12 years that not to forge my own path, basically just to do what people in charge tell me to do. So you have to essentially break that line of thinking. One of the most interesting sections that I found in the book is he's talking about how it's this sort of accepted cultural ideal that to go to college, you have to go to college to be successful. Successful people go to college. There's a huge correlation of, look at all the successful people went to college kind of thing, right? And then he breaks that down and he says, let me read the quote to you. This is on page 73. Yes, the more education people have, the more they earn. But the real reason college-educated people earn more is obvious once you think about it. The kind of people who are the likeliest to succeed in life are also the kind of people who are the likeliest to succeed in college. High achievers are focused, goal-oriented, clear-thinking, problem-solving people. High achievers tend to go to college. Why? Because their parents, peers, and society have convinced them that they need a college degree to succeed in life. So they go to college, they get their degree, and they go out in the world and earn a significant income. Did college add, quote, financial value to their lives? In most cases, no. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, only 27% of college graduates end up in a career related to their college major. So don't expect that sociology or art history major to boost your lifetime earnings. So I like this argument, and it is obvious once you think about it. I've just never really thought about it, is that if you're the kind of person who's really driven and organized and good at achieving things, of course, everyone in your life tells you that it would be a huge mistake not to go to college, and you listen to them. It's not necessarily that college is the thing that made you successful. It's that you have sort of a temperament that helped make you successful, even in spite of that, right? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. What section, fact, piece, etc. of the work do you feel you'll be most likely to remember a year from now? Charlie's advice for grads and parents. Definitely section at the end of the book, chapter 12, How to Succeed Without a Degree, has advice for young people and also parents of young children who want to succeed without the crippling debt of a college degree. And I can think back in my life of many interactions I've had with young people who are saying things to me like, you know, I don't really know what I want to do with my life, but of course I have to go to college, so I'm just sort of going to major in something that I'm interested in. And I so wish I could have articulately said to them, that's not a good idea. Please don't do that. Even if you're not going into debt. I remember a conversation, not a one-on-one conversation, but like a group conversation I was having with a young person, like an 18-year-old. He was saying, my parents are paying for me to go to college. They said, if you want to go to college, we'll pay for it. So I thought kind of like, why not, And I'm just studying in something that I find interesting, a liberal arts thing. And then someone else who was sitting at the table said, you might not be paying for it, but you're paying with your time. 18 to 22 is this extremely important time in a person's life. And you're, like Charlie says pointedly in this book, you're just delaying adulthood because you don't want to grow up. And you are wasting this really important, valuable piece of your time. Life is so short, if you're interested in a particular subject of liberal arts, as stated here, go to the library, read books, read journal articles. You can learn a lot of stuff without having to take this, frankly, obsolete path in education. So we'll jump into how to succeed without a degree. Of course, we talked a lot about all the ways that you can learn about things through the internet, YouTube, massive open online courses, which are free, open college courses. A big thing that Charlie says here that I really strongly agree with is if you don't have a life plan, if you don't have like a very specific set of goals that you're imagining for your future and you think you're going to figure that out in college, that is not a good plan. If you graduate from high school and you don't have a plan, you can delay. You can go to college, take a year, take 2 years, take 3 years, whatever, and work and figure out what you're like at work, read, figure out what you're interested in. College is not a place to figure out what you want to do with your life. It's way too expensive for that. I really agree with that point. Yes, so you can learn a lot about subjects that you're interested in and kind of build your path that way. And then there's also so many kind of certification courses that you can take that really help you actually get a job. And of course, he talks a lot about how there's nothing wrong with a good trade, and that we should kill this cultural idea that people who work with their hands are somehow lesser and unintelligent. Honestly, there are so many people, they go to college, they get a degree in something not useful, and then they end up working at like retail or customer service jobs anyway. And then they're super resentful because they're paying off all of this debt. They're 4 years behind other people who just started working in that trade when they were, or working in that field when they were 18. And they're mad they're not CEO of a company, but those jobs are very limited. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with a good trade, which he calls the muscular class. I like that term, versus the Skype Zoom class. I like these terms that he's created. Lots of other advice he gives. There's so many different paths that you could take, that you could explore. Starting a business, volunteering, finding a mentor, joining the military. So if you're a young person, or if you're a parent of someone who is going to be around this age, it's like, make sure you explore all your options with them. And that the idea that you have to go to college or you're going to be working at McDonald's, it's not reality anymore. If you have a child who's like a high achieving kind of child, maybe the narrative that you should be talking to them about is not, oh, it'd be such a waste for you not to go to college because you're such a high achiever. It should be, well, maybe because you're such a high achiever, you shouldn't be doing what everyone else is doing. Maybe starting a business would be good for you. Maybe that would be a great path for you. Maybe the path less traveled would be good for someone like you. We should explore all of your options. And if you graduate from high school at 18 and you're not sure, take a year, take 2 years. The commitment to a college degree and the debt that it accrues is something that can't be undone. You can't get out of it through bankruptcy. But if you decide you want to do that 2 years after you graduate from high school, you can still do that. And it's fine, All right. Do you have any thoughts about this topic? Did you go to college? Do you think that it was a good investment? All right. So, this is the book for May. The Marxification of Education by James Lindsay. James Lindsay has a bunch of lectures about this topic and about Paulo Freire's impact on the education system in America. If you don't want to read this book, I'm very excited to read this book. I'll link his YouTube channel in the description as well. Thank you for watching. Until next time. All right, bye.